12-year-old Dante Williams sat quietly on the rocky ground, his dark skin glistening with sweat under the alien sun. The massive creature in front of him was bigger than any building he had ever seen back on Earth. Its scales shimmered like blue diamonds, and its eyes were ancient, filled with a wisdom that seemed older than time itself. "Dante boy, what are you doing?" his mother Keisha shouted from their small metal shelter. Her voice carried the fear that every parent on New Haven Colony felt when these giant beings appeared. "Get away from that thing right now." But Dante didn't move. He couldn't explain it to anyone, not even his own family, but when he looked at these creatures that everyone called dragons, he didn't see monsters. He saw something else entirely. Something that spoke to him in ways that had nothing to do with words. The dragon lowered its enormous head until it was just a few feet from Dante. Most kids would have wet themselves with terror. Most adults would have run screaming. But Dante just sat there, calm as a summer morning, looking into those massive golden eyes. "Why don't you hurt me?" Dante whispered, knowing somehow that the creature would understand. Inside his head, a voice as deep as thunder and as gentle as rain answered him. "Because you are different, young one. You hear us when others cannot. You see us as we truly are, not as your people believe us to be." Dante blinked in surprise. He had been hearing voices in his head for as long as he could remember, but he always thought it was just his imagination. His parents had taken him to 3 different doctors on Earth before they came to this colony, worried that something was wrong with their son's mind. "Are you really talking to me?" Dante asked softly. "I am," the voice replied. "And I have much to tell you if you are willing to listen." Around them the other colonists were gathering. Big Jim Rodriguez, the security chief, was walking over with his laser rifle in his hands. The weapon looked like a toy compared to the size of the dragon, but Jim held it like it might actually do some good. "Kid, I need you to back away real slow," Jim called out, his voice tight with nervousness. "These things are dangerous. We don't know what they want." But as the dragon's voice filled Dante's mind again, the boy learned something that made his heart race with excitement and terror at the same time. "We are not what your people think we are," the dragon said. "We did not come to this world to conquer or destroy. We came here because we had nowhere else to go. We are refugees just like many of your own people were once refugees." Images flooded Dante's mind then, pictures that seemed more real than reality itself. He saw the dragon's home world, a place of impossible beauty with cities made of living crystal that sang in harmonies that could make angels weep. He saw the great disaster that destroyed their sun, forcing them to flee across the endless darkness of space. "You're running from something," Dante said, understanding flooding through him. "Yes," the dragon replied. "And we have been running for a very long time." Dr. Angela Washington, the colony's chief scientist, approached carefully with her scanner beeping frantically. She was a brilliant woman who had studied alien life forms across 3 different star systems, but she had never seen anything like this peaceful interaction. "Dante, honey, can you understand what it's saying?" she asked gently. Dante nodded without taking his eyes off the dragon. "He says they're not here to hurt us. They're hiding from something. Something that scared them so much they had to leave their whole world behind." The crowd of colonists murmured nervously. These dragons had appeared 6 months ago, right after the mining operations started digging deep into the mountain range. At first, everyone thought they were some kind of native species defending their territory. The military had been preparing for war. But now, looking at this impossible scene of a human child having a conversation with a creature from the stars, everything seemed different. "What are they hiding from?" Dr. Washington asked. Dante listened as the dragon's voice filled his mind with new images, darker ones that made him shiver despite the warm alien sun. "Something that eats worlds," Dante said quietly. "Something that's still out there, still hunting them." The dragon lifted its great head and looked across the assembled humans. Even though they couldn't hear its voice, somehow they all felt the weight of its ancient sadness. "And now," Dante continued, translating the feelings and images in his mind, "it might be coming here too." 3 months had passed since Dante first spoke with the dragons, and now he spent every afternoon sitting with the ancient creature he had come to know as Elder. The colonists had grown used to seeing the boy talking to the massive being, though most still kept their distance. Today felt different. Elder's usual calm presence seemed troubled, like storm clouds gathering before heavy rain. Dante could feel the dragon's unease even before their minds connected. "What's wrong?" Dante asked, settling into his usual spot on the warm rocks. "There are things you must know," Elder's voice rumbled through his thoughts. "Truths about your people that even you may find difficult to believe." Dante frowned. Over the past months he had learned much about the dragon's history, their destroyed homeworld, their long journey through space. But Elder had never spoken about humans before, except to say how different Dante was from the others. "Show me," Dante said simply. What happened next changed everything Dante thought he knew about his own species. Images flooded his mind, but these weren't of dragon cities or alien worlds. These were human cities, but not like any he had ever seen. They were impossibly advanced, with buildings that reached into the clouds and ships that moved between the stars like birds flying through air. "That's not possible," Dante whispered. "Humans only learned to travel to other worlds 200 years ago. My history teachers told me so." "Your teachers were wrong," Elder replied sadly. "Or perhaps they simply did not know the truth themselves." The visions continued, and Dante saw something that made his heart pound. Dragons and humans were working together, side by side. Dragon knowledge helped humans build their starships. Human curiosity pushed dragons to explore new worlds. Together they had terraformed dozens of planets, creating gardens in the void of space. "We were partners once," Elder explained. "Your people were young but eager to learn. We were old but fascinated by your endless energy and determination. Together we achieved wonders." But then the images turned dark. Dante saw human ships attacking dragon settlements. He watched in horror as his own species hunted the creatures that had helped them reach the stars. The dragons, despite their size and power, were peaceful beings. They had not expected betrayal from their friends. "Why?" Dante asked, tears running down his cheeks. "Why did we turn against you?" "Fear," Elder said simply. "Some humans began to fear that dragons were becoming too powerful. They worried that we would eventually rule over your kind instead of working alongside them. So they convinced others that we were a threat that needed to be eliminated." The massacre had been swift and brutal. Thousands of dragons died before they could even understand what was happening. The survivors scattered across the galaxy, hiding on remote worlds, hoping that someday humans might change. "Most of your people forgot what happened," Elder continued. "The leaders who ordered our destruction rewrote your history books. They told everyone that humans had reached the stars through their own genius alone. The partnership with dragons became a forgotten dream." Dante wiped his eyes and looked up at Elder's massive form. "But you survived. And you came here." "A few of us endured," Elder confirmed. "We have been watching your species for generations, waiting to see if you had grown beyond the fear that once drove you to try to destroy us. You, young Dante, are the first human in 3 centuries who has shown us that hope might still exist." Dr. Angela Washington approached them, carrying her usual collection of scanning equipment. She had been documenting Dante's conversations with Elder, trying to understand how the communication worked. "Dante, what's troubling Elder today?" she asked gently. "He seems more agitated than usual." Dante looked up at her with eyes that seemed much older than his 12 years. "Dr. Washington, what do you know about the early days of human space travel?" Angela raised an eyebrow. "Well, the first successful interstellar voyage was in 2157, led by Captain Rodriguez on the ship Endeavour." "Why do you ask?" "Elder says that's not true. He says humans were traveling between stars much earlier than that and dragons helped them do it." Angela's scanner suddenly started beeping frantically. Deep beneath the colony, something was responding to their conversation. The readings showed massive structures under the ground, far too organized to be natural. "Dante," Angela said slowly, "ask Elder what's down there. Below our colony." The boy relayed the question, and Elder's response made both of them go pale. "He says it's a graveyard," Dante whispered. "The remains of the dragon settlement that was here before humans arrived. There are hundreds of them buried down there." Angela stared at her scanner readings, understanding dawning in her eyes. "We're not colonists on an empty world. We're living on top of a massacre site." Elder's voice filled Dante's mind one more time, heavy with ancient sorrow. "And now, young bridge builder between our peoples, the question becomes, what will your species choose to do with this knowledge?" 6 weeks after learning about the dragon graveyard beneath their colony, Dante found himself part of something he never could have imagined. All 7 surviving dragons on New Haven had emerged from their underground hiding places, and today they were going to share their minds with him at the same time. "Are you sure about this?" his mother Keisha asked nervously, holding his hand as they stood in the largest crystal cave the dragons had revealed. 7 of those creatures connecting to your mind at once? What if it's too much for you to handle?" Dante looked up at the massive beings surrounding them. Elder was there, along with 6 others he had come to know over the past weeks. Their scales caught the light from the glowing crystals, creating rainbow patterns on the cave walls. "I have to do this, Mom," Dante said quietly. They say it's the only way to show me the whole truth. Colonel James Porter stood nearby with his security team, though their weapons seemed pointless in this cavern of giants. Dr. Angela Washington had her recording equipment ready, hoping to capture whatever was about to happen. "Begin when you're ready, son," Colonel Porter said. Despite his military training, even he had come to trust Dante's unique connection with the dragons. Dante closed his eyes and reached out with his mind. Immediately, 7 ancient voices joined together in his thoughts, creating a harmony that seemed to vibrate through his entire body. What they showed him next shattered everything he thought he understood about humanity's place in the universe. "Your species was chosen," Elder's voice came through clearly among the others. "Not because you were the smartest beings we encountered or the most peaceful, but because you possessed something far more valuable." Images flooded Dante's mind, but these weren't memories of the past. These were visions of the future, and they were terrifying. He saw the darkness between the stars, a creeping void that moved from galaxy to galaxy like a cosmic plague. Wherever it touched, entire solar systems simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but completely consumed, as if they had never been there at all. "What is that thing?" Dante gasped, opening his eyes to look at the assembled dragons. "It has many names," another dragon's voice answered in his mind. "The consuming dark. The reality eater. The end of all things. It has already devoured 17 galaxies, and now it approaches this one." Dr. Washington's equipment was going crazy, picking up energy readings unlike anything she had ever recorded. "Dante, what are they showing you?" "The end of everything," Dante whispered, then closed his eyes again as more visions came. He saw advanced alien civilizations, beings of pure energy and crystalline entities that lived for millions of years. He watched as each of these incredibly evolved species encountered the consuming dark and tried to negotiate with it, tried to understand it, tried to find peaceful solutions. All of them failed. All of them were consumed. Every species that chose wisdom over warfare, contemplation over action, peace over preparation was destroyed, the dragons explained. They were too civilized, too sophisticated to fight against something that couldn't be reasoned with. "But humans are different," Dante said, understanding beginning to dawn. "Yes," Elder confirmed. "Humans fight. When faced with impossible odds, when logic says you should surrender, when every reasonable being would seek compromise, humans do something that no other species in the galaxy has ever done." "What's that?" Colonel Porter asked when Dante relayed this part of the conversation. "We get angry and attack anyway," Dante said with a small smile. "Even when we can't win." The dragon's mental voices filled with something that might have been amusement. "Every war your species has fought, every conflict that seemed to tear you apart, every instinct that other races call barbaric, was actually preparation for this moment." More images came then showing Dante the truth that made his head spin. The dragons hadn't just observed human development over the centuries. They had carefully guided it, influencing events from the shadows to ensure that humanity would develop the exact combination of traits needed to face the consuming dark. The Black Death that killed millions in Europe led to social changes that made humans more adaptable, the dragons explained. "Your world wars, terrible as they were, taught your species to fight as one when facing extinction. Every disaster, every conflict, every moment when humans chose to fight instead of surrender, was preparing you for what's coming." Dr. Washington looked at her readings in amazement. "Dante, I'm detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of our solar system. Something big is approaching." Colonel Porter immediately activated his communicator. "Command, this is Porter. I need long-range sensors focused on the outer system immediately." The response came back within minutes and the colonel's face went pale. "Sir, we're reading multiple objects of enormous size entering our solar system. They don't match any known ship designs." Dante didn't need to ask the dragons what was happening. He could feel their ancient fear mixing with something else, something that felt almost like excitement. "It's here, isn't it?" he asked. "Yes," Elder confirmed. "The test is over. The consuming dark has found this galaxy. Now, young bridge between our peoples, we discover whether centuries of preparation have been enough." The evacuation ships filled the skies above New Haven like metallic birds fleeing a storm. Dante stood in the colony's command center, watching the chaos unfold on dozens of screens while trying to process the impossible truth Elder had just revealed to him. "What do you mean I'm not completely human?" Dante asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elder's massive form filled one entire wall of the command center, having broken through the reinforced barriers to be closer during this crisis. Around them, military personnel and civilians worked frantically to coordinate the defense of their world. Your great-grandmother, Ruby Williams, was part of the original contact team that first encountered our kind, Elder explained through their mental connection. When we realized what was coming, what your species would need to face, we made certain modifications to her genetic structure. Dante's mother Keisha stopped organizing refugee supplies and turned to stare at her son. What's he saying, baby? He's saying our family isn't exactly normal, Dante replied, feeling a strange tingling sensation spreading through his body. Admiral Robert Hayes burst into the command center, his uniform wrinkled from sleepless nights of coordinating humanity's desperate defense. The Andorian Empire fell 6 hours ago, he announced grimly. 12 billion beings gone without a trace. The Zentari Federation lasted 8 hours before they were consumed. Dr. Washington looked up from her readings with horror in her eyes. Admiral, according to our long-range sensors, every advanced civilization in this galaxy is sending out surrender broadcasts. They're offering themselves to this consuming dark thing to spare their populations from suffering. Cowards, Colonel Porter muttered, checking his sidearm even though everyone knew conventional weapons would be useless against what was coming. Not cowards, Dante said, standing up straighter as the tingling sensation grew stronger. They're doing what any reasonable species would do when faced with certain extinction. They're trying to negotiate. And let me guess, Sergeant Lisa Thompson said from her communication station, humans aren't going to do the reasonable thing? Dante smiled, and for a moment his eyes seemed to flash with an inner light that wasn't quite human. Nope. We're going to do something stupid instead. As if summoned by their conversation, the other 6 dragons began emerging from underground caves all across the planet. For the first time in centuries, they moved openly under the alien sun, their crystal scales reflecting light in patterns that made the sky look like a kaleidoscope. Dante, his younger sister Nia said from where she was helping coordinate refugee children, something's happening to you. You're starting to glow. She was right. A soft crystalline light was beginning to emanate from Dante's skin, growing brighter with each passing minute. The change didn't hurt, but it felt like something deep inside him was waking up after a very long sleep. The modifications we made to your bloodline weren't just genetic, Elder explained. We planted the seeds for a new kind of being, one that could bridge the gap between dragon wisdom and human determination. You are the first of your kind, Dante Williams, but you will not be the last. Admiral Hayes studied the tactical displays with growing desperation. Our entire fleet is being mobilized, but we're talking about maybe 3,000 ships against something that consumed civilizations with millions of vessels. Numbers don't matter, Dante said, his voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the command center walls. Elder, show them what humans really are. Suddenly, everyone in the room could hear Elder's voice directly in their minds, not just Dante. The dragon's ancient consciousness touched each human present, sharing visions of humanity's true nature. They saw human soldiers charging machine gun nests in ancient wars, knowing they would die but doing it anyway to save their comrades. They witnessed mothers lifting cars off trapped children through sheer force of will. They experienced the moment when humans looked at the impossible vastness of space and decided to explore it anyway. Your species doesn't fight because you think you can win, Elder's voice explained to all of them. You fight because giving up isn't in your nature. This is why we chose you. This is why we shaped your development across centuries of conflict and growth. Dr. Washington watched her instruments in amazement as energy readings spiked across the planet. The dragons aren't just communicating with us. They're somehow boosting our technology, our ships, our weapons. Colonel Porter's communication device crackled to life. Sir, this is Fleet Command. We're reading incredible power surges across all human vessels. Our weapons are charging to levels we've never seen before. Dante felt the change accelerating within him. His consciousness was expanding, touching not just Elder's mind but all 7 dragons simultaneously. More than that, he could sense every human on the planet, every ship in the fleet, every heart beating with the stubborn refusal to surrender that defined their species. I understand now, Dante said, his body beginning to shimmer with crystalline energy. We're not just going to fight the consuming dark. We're going to become something it's never encountered before. What's that? Admiral Hayes asked. Dante's smile was both human and something far more ancient. A species too stupid to know when we're beaten, backed by beings old enough to remember when the universe was young. Together, we're going to teach this cosmic bully what happens when it messes with the wrong galaxy. The final battle began just as the alien sun started to set over New Haven. Dante stood in the heart of the great crystal chamber, surrounded by all 7 dragons and his family. Above them, reality itself seemed to be tearing apart as the consuming dark ships descended from the void between dimensions. I don't want to lose you, his sister Nia cried, grabbing onto his arm as crystalline light began to pour from his skin like liquid starlight. You won't lose me, Dante promised, though his voice now carried echoes that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I'll just become something more than what I was. His mother Keisha held back tears as she watched her son transform before her eyes. Baby, are you sure this is the only way? Mom, remember when I was little and you used to tell me that sometimes we have to do scary things to protect the people we love? Dante smiled, and the expression was still completely human despite the otherworldly energy surrounding him. This is one of those times. The transformation began in earnest as Dante opened his mind completely to the 7 dragons. But instead of just hearing their voices, he became part of them and they became part of him. His consciousness expanded beyond the chamber, beyond the planet, reaching out to touch every human ship in the defensive fleet. Admiral Hayes watched in amazement from the command bridge of the flagship as his instruments registered impossible changes. All ships, report your status immediately. Sir, this is Captain Rodriguez on the Thunder Bay, came the first response. Our weapons are showing power levels 300% above maximum safe limits, but somehow the systems aren't overloading. Captain Johnson here on the New Liberty, another voice added. Sir, I swear our ship is thinking for itself. The navigation computer is plotting attack runs I never programmed. Down in the crystal chamber, Dante's body was no longer entirely solid. He flickered between flesh and energy, between boy and something that belonged to both Earth and the stars. Through his expanded awareness, he could feel the consuming dark pressing against their galaxy like a cosmic infection. Tell me what you see, Colonel Porter said, his military training keeping him focused even as reality bent around them. I see everything, Dante replied, his voice now speaking from every communication device in the fleet simultaneously. The dark has consumed 17 galaxies because every species it encountered tried to negotiate with it. They tried to understand it. They tried to find peaceful solutions. Elder's ancient voice joined with Dante's, creating a harmony that seemed to make the crystal chamber itself sing. But humans don't negotiate with bullies. You punch them in the face. Above the planet, the human fleet engaged the Dark's reality-warping vessels in a battle unlike anything the universe had ever witnessed. But this wasn't the desperate last stand everyone had expected. The human ships, now enhanced with dragon crystal technology and guided by Dante's expanded consciousness, were actually winning. Dr. Washington monitored the impossible readings from her instruments. The Dark ships are retreating. I don't understand it. How are we pushing back something that destroyed entire galactic civilizations? Dante's laughter echoed through the chamber and across the fleet, carrying with it the sound of human stubbornness meeting ancient wisdom. Because we're too stupid to know when we're supposed to give up. The consuming dark, for the first time in its existence across multiple dimensions, encountered something it couldn't understand. Every other species had faced it with logic, with attempts at communication, with surrender when defeat seemed certain. But humans, guided by dragon knowledge and powered by their own refusal to quit, simply kept fighting harder the more impossible the odds became. This is Captain Williams on the Freedom, came a voice over the communications array. Sir, the enemy ships are actually running away from us. I've never seen anything like it. Sergeant Thompson looked up from her station with wonder in her eyes. Admiral, we're getting reports from across the galaxy. Other species are coming out of hiding. They're saying the Dark is retreating from our entire galactic arm. Through his connection to the fleet and the dragons, Dante could sense the consuming Dark's confusion and growing fear. It had fed on the orderly surrender of civilized species for eons, but humans were chaos personified, backed by beings old enough to remember when the universe was young. It's leaving, Dante announced, his consciousness now spread across light years but still centered in the boy who had once sat peacefully with dragons. The Dark is retreating beyond the galactic rim. It doesn't understand us, and things that don't understand us make it afraid. Admiral Hayes couldn't believe the tactical displays. All enemy contacts are withdrawing. I repeat, all enemy contacts are withdrawing from our space. In the crystal chamber, Dante slowly began to solidify back into mostly human form, though crystalline patterns still glowed beneath his skin. We won, he said simply. Not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we were too stubborn to lose. His family rushed to embrace him as the dragons around them hummed with satisfaction. Above them, the stars were safe again, protected by a species that had learned to combine human determination with ancient wisdom. What happens now? Nia asked her brother. Dante smiled, looking both like the 12-year-old boy he had been and the bridge between worlds he had become. Now we make sure nothing like the dark ever threatens our galaxy again. And maybe we help other species learn that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to refuse to let it be unsolvable. The universe had found its protectors at last.